Well, good afternoon and welcome, everybody. My name is John Mastriani. I'm an assistant professor in residence of jazz studies here at UConn. And today we'll have the unique opportunity to hear from two UConn alumni panelists about their career journey and how their experiences and lessons learned may help our current and future students in our music program. During this program, our panelists will answer a variety of questions we have prepared in addition to some questions from our audience. Should you have any questions, please ask in the chat. At the conclusion of this program, students will have the option to join a panelist of their choosing in a breakout room for the chance to network. So without any further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our two panelists. And without stealing their thunder, I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about themselves and their journey, and then we'll get going with some questions. So we'll start with Suzanne, if you don't mind, and thank you so much for being here.
Sure. Oh, well, it's a pleasure. It's really an honor to get to chat with some former or some fellow UConn Huskies. So I was a class of 1985, and I was a flute performance major. I'm from Fairfield, Connecticut, and I envisioned that I would become an orchestral flute player, and that was what that was my dream. That was what I trained for, and found myself graduating very well prepared and really enthusiastic about it. And then, um, after getting my typical day job that one gets when one is a um, and person in the arts, I ended up going. Oops, I've lost my video. There we go. Um, I ended up getting a variety of day jobs, and one of them happened to be in radio. I had an opportunity to um, work for a station in my hometown of Fairfield, WSHU Public Radio, out of Sacred Heart University. And what I was realizing after I kind of after graduation was that I wanted to perform, and that I realized that orchestral performing wasn't necessarily the proper venue for me. And when I started in radio, I kind of crafted my own position at the station. They had a couple of positions open, and I asked to just combine them. But one of them was to do the weekend shift and to be on the air for a program that I was pretty much assigned to play Baroque music. So from that was 34 years ago. So from that little direction, that little kernel of direction, with me completely green in radio, I now am the host and executive producer of a national syndicated radio program called Sunday Baroque that's heard on about 240 radio stations and heard by more than 420,000 listeners every week across the country. So that's sort of the Cliff's Notes version of what I do. Basically the path is that I thought I was going to be a flute player as a performer, and I'm actually a radio host as a performer, and also still very much active as a flutist playing both solo and chamber music. So that's it. That's who I am.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Suzanne. Okay, so Mo, the stage is yours.
Well, it's great to be here, John. I'm honored to be here, and it's great to see Suzanne again. We actually went to school together. I'm class of '86. Forget my voice. I'm actually coming over a cold right now. But yeah, I had envisions, and since I was a kid, to be, touring and studio session musician. And as fate would have it, I actually stepped right out of graduation at UConn into a gig with Ray Charles. Ended up touring the world within months of graduating UConn, which turned into a 35-year adventure that I'm still on. And that was, you know, it's been quite an adventure. I'm now involved in a lot of other things, as well as teaching and charity work. I do a lot of production. I do a lot of, I wear the producer hat a lot, and I do a lot of session work from home, from my own studios. I also am music director on a lot of shows and stuff. But as I said, back in '86, it was Ray Charles, and that kind of took me on a journey throughout basically LA and New York, back and forth, and then later Atlanta and London, where I live now. Actually live in Wales, but I work out of London. So it was kind of a cool, my career has been like a tour of R&B and soul and jazz and gospel and pop music all the way through 10 years with Earth, Wind and Fire, and many jazz artists such as George Duke and Marcus Miller, and on and on, right on into Janet Jackson and Michael Jackson, Christina Aguilera, and the great David Foster. And I'm still involved as music director for Bette Midler, the actress and singer. So it's been a wild ride. It's still not, hasn't stopped yet. I just actually played with Roberta Flack recently, a couple of weeks ago. So even though I'm based in London, I still work out in the United States as well.
Terrific.
I have
Thank
to
you.
interject
Oh,
something
please.
because Mo, because you know we were there at the same time, and he's way too modest to say this, but all of the rest of us who had the pleasure to be there, pardon the pun, we're like, oh my God, Mo is a rock star. Like we absolutely knew
That's funny.
that Mo was like ahead and shoulders above the rest of us and was going places like from the time we were all like 18 years old. So I just have to put that out there, Mo. Like I said, you're too modest to say it, but it is absolutely the God's honest truth.
Well, thank you, Suzanne. Truthfully, I was very intimidated by, the kind of people like you, like the real virtuoso people that like practice a lot and, were very, like just could just jump into a concerto or, jump do all these ensembles and all. I was doing that stuff, but I wasn't really putting the time into it. That way my dreams were kind of elsewhere. So I was in school, but I wasn't a great student, to be honest with you. So that's very nice of you to say that.
Well, I want to
It's true.
interject at this point as well, because it's amazing. You hear it so often. It's really a small world. So I had the pleasure, we'll keep the puns going, I guess, Suzanne, but I had the pleasure of meeting Mo last spring because he was kind enough to come and speak to our jazz ensemble here at UConn virtually during the pandemic. And it was really wonderful to have him. And as we started talking, it was like, wait a minute, I know you. I know you. Where do I know you from? So it turns out that I did a bunch of work with Ray Charles as well, not consistently like Mo did, be on the road with him, but whenever he came to this area, Connecticut. So it turns out we were on the same gigs at the same time. So that it's kind of funny how that all works out. And Suzanne, so you say you're from Fairfield. So I'm from Bridgeport, Connecticut. And my dad still lives on the Fairfield Bridgeport line near Three Corner Pizza. Do you remember it? So
of course, yeah.
So I have to ask you. So who was your high school band director?
Mike Varga.
I know Mike Varga very, very, very well. We were colleagues.
He was wonderful, and actually before that, Mike Gurman.
Okay. Yep. So that's right.
So I went to Andrew Ward High School.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
No, that's okay. That was right around the time that I started teaching. I taught public schools for 36 years before I was full-time at here at UConn. And so that's my old stomping grounds. So that's
oh wow,
it's amazing to hear. So.
Yeah, I grew up in the Stratfield section right there. And as a matter of fact, WSHU at Sacred Heart is of course right there on the Bridgeport Fairfield line. So in the north end. So
amazing.
Yeah. Well, it is a small world.
It's a small world. And, I work with somebody.
In hindsight, Mo and I interviewed Mo a couple of months ago for my blog, but I think one of the experiences we both had is that not only were there people like Mo there who were like astonishingly talented, but that music department really did have some incredible faculty members, people who were just, they were just so accomplished in their professional lives, as well as being really fine teachers. And a perfect example is my private teacher, who of course was my most important teacher and mentor at UConn as a performance major, and that was Martin Ornstein. And I'll tell you what, he was so understated and such a wonderful, I am so fortunate that I have always had teachers who were nurturing and gentlemanly, and I didn't have the kind of abusive kind of situations of any kind that I know so many other people experience. So there's that. But I also know that he was so understated and so generous with his desire to teach and impart experience and knowledge and wisdom that I only learned decades later. Like about 7 years ago, I went to visit him at his home. He's sadly just died just about a year ago. But I went to see him and finally meet his wife for the first time. And this man who suddenly he was very quiet during lessons, but he suddenly started talking about his experiences, his teacher, his young life as a performer. And he was telling me and another person who graduated around the same time, another flutist and sitar, about yeah, he remembers he played this gig one time with his teacher, and his teacher invited him to play second. It was going to be a recording of the Rite of Spring, and he said that it was going to be no rehearsal. It was going to be straight to tape, and he was very nervous. And of course, his teacher had brought him into this gig, and he wanted to really do an excellent job. The pressure was high and everything. So we said, "Wow, that's a pretty tall order. What's the name?" And he's like, yeah. So what's the name of the recording? Well, the name of this recording that he did was Stravinsky Conducts Stravinsky. So my teacher, my main mentor, played the Rite of Spring with Stravinsky conducting as a young kid. And I'm like, how did we never know this? Like there was so much incredible talent and experience there, not to mention 2 degrees of separation from Igor Stravinsky. But and I think that's I don't know, Mo, like that's kind of a little bit of what we talked about, that we to have this experience at the University of Connecticut was so amazing and so surprising and so gratifying, and in hindsight, wow.
Yeah, it was, I mean, I had such, I don't know if you remember. Well, first of all, I remember when Neil Larrabee came to town, and he completely changed my piano playing. Um, and Ellen Rowe showed up, and Ellen was just an incredible artist, and ended up being, friends with her. And great Hale Smith, who was actually tutored to people like the Marsalises and all that from New Orleans. Ended up, I studied jazz composition with him, and actually he was great with advice for me in terms of like moving on to do the Ray Charles gig and all that. He was like very much a mentor for me, and on and on. Great, as you said, great teachers that have the stories of their own.
So let me ask you both, you've both shared kind of how your journey has moved along and is still moving along. Can you let us know what were the biggest challenges as your journey unfolded and continues to unfold? What challenge
Mo, you want to do that?
Sure, sure. Well, I mean, there are many. I've been really involved. Sure. Well, I mean, there are many. I've been really involved in the business. I'm hearing an echo back. I'm sorry. It's kind of throwing
I'm
me a little
hearing
bit.
it as well.
Here, I'll
Yeah.
turn my.
It might be
Yeah.
maybe
I think if we all mute unless we're speaking, that may help. We'll try that.
There you go. There you go. I mean, like, I've seen many challenges in the business, and in the music business part of it, which is always challenging to me. And like, being compensated for intellectual property, everything from that to, the challenges that go with just maintaining a financial status while doing something that you're always a person that's a contractor, for the rest of your life. That's always been a challenge as well. COVID certainly was a challenge, kind of moving backwards, trying to find new ways to do things online as far as sessions and even concerts online, and collaborating with people, writing songs through collaboration. I think one of the biggest challenges for just about every artist is their own self and their own self-worth and their own, being relevant, feeling relevant in a world of so many artists, and knowing that you have a place, and that your music has a place, and that you should continue to be inspired and do the music that's in your heart, and do follow your dream, literally follow your dream, and use your intuition to take you on to the next step from wherever you are, and just never give that up. And so I think that is in itself is a major challenge, just dealing with the kind of the mental issues of being an artist and continuing on.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. Would you like to tackle that one as well? So much, Suzanne. Would you like to tackle that one as well?
Yeah, sure. So I have to say, unfortunately, I didn't actually hear all of Mo's answer. I kind of got the gist of it, but the connection was a little bit sketchy. I kind of moved to see if I could get in a better place. But so forgive me if I'm repeating something that he has said, but I have to say there have been sort of different challenges along the continuum, because initially for me, one of my big challenges was wrapping my brain around the idea that I was not going to do the thing that I was so convinced I was meant to do, which was to play as an orchestral player. So I had to kind of my mindset and like a different pathway. And it was a different performing path, because then I thought, well, okay, not orchestral, but maybe chamber music, and then maybe this and maybe that. And then, like I said, when I got into radio, it was really my perfect fit. It was like I suddenly went, wow, this is what I am meant to do. I love this so much. But it's not like I suddenly went from I'm not a performer. I went to it's not an either or, it's an and, a both and so for me, the continuing challenge in some ways has been to continue to cultivate myself as a performer while having this full-time responsibility of being a radio professional. Now, for me, one of the ways I've been able to address and tackle that challenge is that, especially as the show has become more widespread around the country, as we've added more stations all over the place, I have now started to merge those two identities, if you will. There's certainly a lot of overlap, but like, for example, I often will go to a station and play a concert for their listeners. So I go there as Suzanne Bona, the host of Sunday Baroque, the national radio show, but they promote it as, by the way, Suzanne Bona, the radio host, is also a flute player, and she's brought her guitar collaborator with her, or she's collaborating with one of our announcers who's on, and these concerts, communities where the day brunch. And I even wear both hats, where I kind of do like with the portable, with the handheld mic, and I talk to other musicians, and then I sit in for a set. So, for me, like I said, it's come full circle now, where honest to goodness, playing I am playing twice as Louis. We're on the station there. I am pretty
Okay, we seem to have lost Suzanne for the moment. So hopefully she'll get back to us quickly. So Mo, if you're still here, maybe we could move on to this question. So what experience at UConn do you believe was most helpful in helping you prepare for your future?
I think there were so many. I mean, I was there, I'll say again, I was really lucky to have Ellen Rowe there when I was there. And some other guys too, like John Smeda, you might know John Smeda.
Oh, I know John very well, yes.
I think you would. I know a lot of musicians from the Fairfield area, by the way. We probably know, I don't know if you know Fred Vigdor. Fred and I played with Average White Band together.
We went to school together. We were in college together, yeah.
Yeah. And his dad was head of the union down there too.
First gig I ever played.
Yeah.
In fact, so funny story. He not to interrupt your story, but he hired me to play in some Norwalk big band, and I guess it was a union gig. So before the gig, Vic comes up to me and he says, "If anyone asks, your name is Mo Pleasure." Because I guess he had, well, not, but he had to give. I had to be somebody who was in the union. I was like a kid, like I hadn't joined the union yet, and I was just about to join. But anyway, so funny story when you say Fred and Vic, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah. I can play in the John Fumasoli and all those guys.
Sure. Yep.
Rock Forth and all that. As a matter of fact, and not to avoid the question,
No.
when I was a kid, do you know Neil Slater is?
Neil Slater is my biggest influence in my life. I mean, I was his work study student. That's why I went to the University of Bridgeport. That's why we all did, because Neil recruited all of us. Dave Weckl, I mean, all these people. I mean, the program was absolutely amazing. And that's where I met Fred and Fumasoli, and we're all University of Bridgeport grads under Neil.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Rob Aries, I think, probably down there too.
Sure. Yep. Rob Aries.
When I was 12 years old, I used to play I grew up in Guilford.
Mm-hmm.
So at Guilford middle school, I used to be piano player for the choir, the chorus, and all that kind of stuff. And we did a Neil Slater arrangement of one of the songs, and had a piano solo in the middle.
Yep.
And I can honestly say that was my first experience like playing jazz. Was doing that. And we went down to Bridgeport. You used to have competition for high school jazz bands.
Yes.
So we were in it. Yep. And Neil gave me a really nice write up about my solo and stuff. It's one thing on there.
Oh, that's cool. He just turned 90 years old.
Wow, amazing.
So I just talked to him not long ago. I called him to wish him happy birthday, and we keep in close contact. I mean, I went down to North Texas to visit him. I stayed at his house for a few days. Wow. He left Bridgeport in my senior year to take a gig at North Texas. I was heartbroken. Literally. I mean, here's my mentor, and all that stuff. So and all that. And Neil, if you know Neil, so when I met him, he had on white tennis shorts and a red t-shirt that said Polychords on it. So I had, we talked, we did our business, and I said, "Thanks very much, Professor Slater." I said, "Have a great day." And he goes, "Don't tell me what to do." So that was my first meeting with Neil. Wow. And it's been a beautiful relationship ever since. But it's
oh man, yeah, I really I got to meet him for a second, as a kid, so that was thrilling. But yeah, back to the UConn. There were so many experiences there, and a lot of them were outside the music program. I started there as an engineering major, but I was taking music classes, and I was doing the jazz band. Sumeda was head of jazz band, so we used to do little tours and all that kind of stuff. And I met a lot of people from the jazz band, where I ended up actually being in other bands with. We play off campus. I was in a rock band called Fire and Ice for a while. We kind of started the whole Hartford rock and roll scene. Russian Lady, and I'm trying to think of all those 36 Lewis Street and all that kind of stuff. We were like one of the first rock bands to play in that area. We had a singer who was a voice major who recently passed. Her name's Diane Bennick, who's a beautiful, beautiful singer. So there was that, and then there was like my theory teachers, like Avo Somer, who I remember learning quite a bit from him. Like I mentioned, Hale Smith, who was quite a mentor for me, even in my professional career. And he was the only African American teacher in the music department at that time, until Peter Bagley came along. So we had, there was that kind of thing of, he was almost like a father figure to me while I was there. But yeah, so many of the experiences. I played in the orchestra, and I played trumpet in the concert band. Larry Ratcliffe came through there for a while, and Larry was brilliant conductor and musician. And sometimes I would even get to play in some bands that some of the teachers had. They would call me to play bass in their jazz bands and stuff like that they were doing off campus. So Yeah, it was an incredible learning experience in so many ways, and not all of them were in the classroom. Some of them were off campus as well.
Sure, of course. So now, what do you wish you knew as a student surrounding career or career preparation? So what wisdom would you impart to a student or say, I wish I knew that back then, and I know, I of course know it now.
I think one thing is music is meant to be enjoyed. It's fun. I mean, when you start doing it as a study and you're on like a very strict curriculum, that's great. It's a study. It's a very serious art form, of course. But when you break it down, the truth of what's important in music is how do you connect with your own soul to express yourself that others feel it in whatever way that they feel it. The actual important part about music is the communication aspect of it and the aspect of joy. So I think a lot of times, of course, it's school, so it's going to be stressful. There's going to be, finals and juries and all this kind of thing as well. But I think that learning that the importance of the joy aspect of it, I would have given myself a little bit more, um, you know, more latitude on just like really, really enjoying myself and knowing that that actually has some value as a musician when you get out in the real world. People can feel that coming from you, and actually makes you, more hireable, and more people want to work with you. I think when they can connect with something that you're doing from your soul.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because all these amazing artists you work with, like Ray Charles, and you just mentioned Roberta Flack, you must experience so much joy when you're on. So when people are listening to, because they're such like amazing performers, so you must that must be a total sense of joy for you to be able to see that joy coming from the audience, and we all feed off of that as musicians, as you know. So,
We do. I think that's really primary. I think, John, you probably agree with me a little bit that that's the reason we're in it. We really, um, as I say, we don't choose music; it chooses us. It's a
right.
calling. And when you experience that unspoken communication with people that are on the same page, or on the stage, and we're all feeling something that we're coming together with a collective intention, as I say a lot. And delivering that to an appreciative audience and getting back energy from that audience. Pretty much that's the highest points of our lives, really, if you think about
Right. Totally agree. Suzanne, it's nice to have you back. So can you hear me okay now? Are we kind of? Okay, I see your lips moving, but I can't. Are you on mute by any chance? Or because I can't, it looks like you might be muted. There you go.
Yes, I was on mute. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Sorry
we
about that. I'm not sure my web connection is rather fragile, apparently.
yeah, yeah, no, it's okay. We were just talking
Anyway,
about Mo was just telling us what do you wish you knew as a student surrounding your career preparation and as you were getting ready to move along in your journey? What do you wish you knew back then that you know now?
what do I? Well, there's probably a lot of stuff, right?
I would imagine so.
I think I wish I had taken, frankly, more classes, not only but outside the music department. I found that as I said earlier, I found it really gratifying that I got such a holistic education. I initially thought I wanted to go to a conservatory, and when I ended up going to UConn, I thought, oh, I'll go for a year and then I'll transfer. And then I had such a rich and positive experience. So in hindsight, I wish I had worked a little harder, though well, I wish that I had up myself, just really kind of self more to take more within as well, more. Uh, that's one thing. her it was my daughter. The idea of trying to one, I think I was very, very people has become English. And so, you know, and I think that as artists, you know, Mo lives in Wales, you know, and I really admire the many things that he has done as a musician, as a person. Um, so that's one thing. And I think
Well, we may have lost Suzanne again. I'm not sure, but Mo, can you hear her? I can't hear her. So
Oh, I've lost you as well.
yeah, okay, all right. Well, oh yeah, now her square is gone and everything. Well, let's move on to one final question, and then there may be some questions from in the chat or where.
Okay.
What advice do you have for students or recent graduates looking to do something similar to what you do now? What advice would you give them?
It's a great question, John. You know, because the industry has changed so much. I've watched it change a lot, and you know, with everything, technology, you know, the internet, social media, self promotion, you know, distribution of your own music, the way you're paid for your own music, the way you know this good and bad for everything one of those things and more. You know, I mean, when I was coming up, it was like the record and the major labels were everything. It was like, you know, your whole thing was trying to get a deal. You know, you get an artist deal, publishing deal, you know, label deal, whatever, something where like a certain amount of money could be allotted to you for doing your art, where you could kind of like, you know, take it easy and like really focus on a particular project and have someone else kind of paying the bills while you're doing that. Now I think that stuff happens. I think it's just done in really different ways. There's, of course, there's like a lot of private and independent labels and independent ways of doing it and doing it yourself, including recording. Recording now has come to be something that you can do on a laptop. Whereas, if you remember, John, back in the day, we had to go into a studio and pay the money, have an engineer, and you know, you'd spend a half hour just getting a snare drum sound, you know, this kind of thing, you know. So it's changed a lot. I think that one thing that I had done in the indie world, which I'd say I started about 2001, I recognized that the major labels were going to be failing and that there was going to be a lot more opportunity for people to get their music out there without having to give so much of their, you know, earnings and blood, sweat, and tears away to someone else and just actually do it. Uh, I've actually I did a lot of bartering. So I did, and I think that college, university is a great place to do that because you're in a situation where there are people that are like learning, but also really, really good at everything from graphic arts to recording to being able to playing, of course, you know, and everything in between to accounting to this and that. And like I think that you can kind of, if you are business minded in any way, um, that you can put together kind of your group of people. You play bass on somebody's track and then ask them to play violin on yours. You do some music for somebody's website and then maybe they'll help you build your website, that kind of thing. I did a lot of that kind of stuff because basically, honestly, I just didn't have the money to to hire those kind of people. So I would do favors back and forth, a lot of bartering. I try to say that a lot to people, like, you know, use the people around you and help the people around you at the same time.
You alluded to this a little bit, but how has the pandemic changed what you do and the industry? And what can students do to prepare for the ramifications of this that may be permanent?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for one thing we can say about this business is that it goes up and down in terms of, you get a tour and things are great for a while, and then the tour's over, and then all of a sudden you're waiting for the phone to ring. A lot, I would say, save your money, like put aside a certain amount of your money at all times. That's something I wish I had done. Like say if it was 5% or something like that, just put it away for literally a rainy day. And that's one thing. I think secondly, use technology in any way you can. I'm actually working with some people on some things that are kind of cool, like to where maybe I could do in sync rehearsing, recording, that kind of thing with people all over the world. So that kind of stuff is coming to where you're able to, you don't have to necessarily drive to one location and have everybody there to even do a rehearsal or a session or something like that. So stay on the cutting edge of technology, I think, is really important. I do, my wife is a great singer, and we do have a duo. So through the whole time of COVID, we were doing concerts and getting hired by companies, investment companies that had parties, Zoom parties, this kind of thing, wineries. Um, and, it's a great tool for the internet. It's a great tool for self-promotion, and use that, build your following, because there is somebody that is interested in what you're doing. And the internet is a great way to do that. I'm sure people at the college age right now know the internet a lot better than I did or do. But if you can use those things, you can start building your base, people that you are interested in you as an artist and you and your music. Think about how big that will be in 2-3 years, 10 years. The same people, when you have your CD done, you'll be able to sell to those people.
One thing that you said earlier that was so crucial is that, of course, we didn't choose music, it chose us. I always found it astonishing, these young people who are in school these days. So maybe not so much the music students because they've chosen a path, but for many of them, their jobs haven't been invented yet.
Right.
Yeah, we live in an age where, and I mean, there are some crazy statistics out there about how many jobs have been invented, if you will, in the last 6 or 7 years or so. And so some of these kids are kind of, if I don't know, I use the analogy, like throwing darts with a blindfold on. I mean, they're going out there, and it presents challenges for us here at the university level because we try to prepare them with so many different skills and to just be flexible and to be compatible, if you will, with everything that's going on out there. But it is pretty wild. It's like, I mean, like you did, I knew, okay, this is it. I'm going to be a teacher and I'm playing music. But for some of these kids, I feel for them, so.
So do I. It's a lot harder, John, than it used to be, and in all aspects. But at the same time, there are a lot of tools that we didn't have that can be used. Excuse me. And get started now. It's a great time to be starting, because when you get out, you already have a head start on kind of your own base. I think a business mind to a certain extent is really important, because also keeping track of what when you start talking about publishing and royalties and songwriting, um, writers royalties, players royalties, the difference between that, all those, how they're paid in different countries and by different entities. It's a great thing to know, because there is sync license stuff with music and television and movies and all that kind of stuff. Knowledge of that kind of stuff is a great thing to have, I think.
Right. Have you had the opportunity does it look like traveling is starting to maybe come back and you're going to be able to go on tour and do some stuff, or has that not really come back yet?
John, it has. I in the last 4 weeks, I've been to France. I've been to the United States. I did a thing in Washington, D.C. Starting to get calls back from L.A. The Voice called me about possibly being on that. I got calls with the Kennedy Center Honors, which may or may not work out.
Mm.
So it is starting to open up. The hard part is I'm finding is still the testing, and the COVID rules are still
Right.
tough. So I actually spend a lot of time and money, like with all the rules between the countries and the tests you have to take and all that stuff.
Right, right.
But yeah, absolutely, it's getting that way. I don't want to mention it, but there's a possible artist that I work with that may do a residency in Vegas, which would be really wonderful because I could take my family there.
Oh,
Yeah,
great.
exactly. Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely, and it feels great. It feels great to be because it was for a long time, kind of like, is this phone ever going to ring again with something, you know,
Ex-
travel related?
Exactly. Here's a question from someone in the chat that's directed specifically at you. So it says, you mentioned earlier that you weren't the best student in school. How were you able to navigate and push through with school and finish, knowing that you didn't excel at it? And what just stopped you from saying, okay, forget this, and I'll just continue in my music journey?
Well, okay. To set this up, John, both of my parents were teachers. My dad is a school principal, was a school principal. My mother was a teacher, both very, very strict. By the time I got to UConn, I'd already completed 2 courses, math and an English course and math course, like accelerated. Um, so I was like, the academic thing was, I was pushed. Back in our time period, um, as an African American kid, we were told kind of like what we were supposed to be doing as jobs because they were saying, like, say Ebony magazine, engineering is the thing right now. So we're talking about like 1980. This right now, this is like what, you know, blacks are being hired in. So all of my cousins went to like Georgia State or Rensselaer or that kind of thing. So when I went to UConn, I was told to do engineering, and I did. I started in engineering. Didn't take me long to figure out that music was eventually going to take over. But I think that, and I don't want to discourage anybody from like making sure you go to your classes and study music at an excellent school. UConn School of Music is excellent. But I did a lot of playing outside of the school too, and that ended up being quite a big part of my education. Um, so in terms of like me, like kind of going, I did say to myself, for my parents, I do need to make sure that I do get a degree and be able to show it to them, and then I can do whatever I want. So it was kind of that thing of completion. And I actually ended up leaving to play with Ray Charles and then coming back again, getting my degree, and then going back out with Ray Charles. And that's a whole story too. But the important part of the degree for me was really from my parents more than anything else.
Well, Suzanne, we're happy that we have you back here. So can you hear me okay?
I can. Yeah, I found
Okay.
I sought out and found a better connection. So here I am.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. Well, we have a couple short minutes left, and maybe we'd love to hear from you. I know Mo responded to this, but maybe what advice would you have for students or recent graduates looking to do something similar to what you do now? What advice would you give to them?
Well, and I think even if it's not something similar to what I do as a radio person, but simply the idea of being flexible, being open to the idea that maybe what you think you want at 14 or 18 or 20 is not necessarily. This is also why I caution people against getting tattoos, right? Because what you think is cool and right for you when you're a teenager is not necessarily the thing that turns out to be the thing you want to do forever, right? So I think I would just say to be open to the possibilities, to be open to changing course, right? It's like I thought, well, okay, I need a day job. That's cool, right? I'll do radio. And, I fell in love. And so I think that that's probably the best, particularly general advice, which is to just not get so hung up on the idea. When people ask me what I do, my first answer is usually I say I'm a musician, and that's my identity. Do I make my main living as a musician? I mean, kind of, that's kind of part of what I do, but like really I'm a radio broadcaster, but like
I think that kind of gets into what I said earlier about, some of the challenges is I think, we have to just think more broadly about who we are as an identity and also how we express that. And sometimes how we express it is a little different than the way we originally thought we were going to do it. So just be flexible, be open-minded. I want to just also double back because I was listening to Mo talk about, becoming fluent in like the business aspect. You have really mastered that really beautifully. And that question about, not being a good student, that I mean, again, you're being a little modest here, Mo, and I know I've got to like blow your cover here because it's not that he wasn't a good student; it's that he was a wonderful student. He's such a wonderful musician that his education included these incredible high level opportunities to play with Ray Charles. So I would not say that not being in school because you were on tour with Ray Charles was not being a good student. I'd say that means you were like an exceptional student. That was like the master class, so, you did it. And once again, you did it kind of in your own time. You did it because you had these opportunities to cultivate your education and to cultivate your professionalism and your musicianship in these incredibly high level venues and with these masters. It wasn't that you were a bad student. It was that you just did it on a different timetable. That's all. So like I said, I think I'm here to be Mo's reality check. You were a wonderful student.
Thank you, Sue. I wish you were there to tell my parents that back in the 80s.
I am sure that they came to understand that at some point.
No, it's a really great point. And sometimes opportunities are put before you that you simply can't pass up. So
Right.
whether
Right.
you're in school or not, and when a door opens, you try to walk through it, and you hope that you're doing the right thing for yourself. So
Absolutely. And I meant clearly Mo has, right?
of course, of
and
course.
and well, I have too, and I think anybody that really follows their heart and again is open-minded about it. It's not failure if you do something different than what you thought you were going to do when you were 15 or 20 or 25. It's actually success because it's a sign of maturity. It's a sign of professionalism, and to change course if that's the right thing to do, right?
Right. Well, Suzanne, I'm so happy that you said that because clearly you have done that. And not only that, but like you said, you tell people, "Oh yeah, I'm a musician first. That's what I do."
That's
And
why
one of the things I always tell people is one of the most beautiful things about music is there's like thousands of different ways to cultivate that passion in the art form and to earn a living for yourself. And I was going to say that you're okay, so you're not playing in the Boston Pops, you're not playing flute in the Boston Pops or whatever orchestra, but you are using your music and you continue to make it your passion and you're managing to earn a living and the joy in your face and both of yous, I hope it's a good example for our listeners of if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. And you two are amazing examples of that. I'm in awe of both of you and hearing you speak, and it's inspiring to me, and it's wonderful to have you here today. And we so appreciate your time and your wisdom that you imparted today on all our listeners. Does anyone and you guys have anything to add, just kind of in closing, anything that you would like to add, subtract, multiply, divide?
Well, I want to thank you, John. It was an honor, and I want to thank Emily, and I want to thank Steve as well, and all the people involved. And I'm looking forward to come back to visit. I haven't been back to UConn in a long time.
Mo, let's meet there.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely.
Yes, let's definitely meet there. We'll hang. So,
Yes.
so it looks like there's one more quick question that came in for Suzanne. If you don't mind, quickly, as a radio host, what are some of the challenges you faced and things that you learned stepping into that field?
Well, I will say one of the wisest things I was taught by the program director at the station who hired me was, and this is going to sound really weird, so hear me out for a minute because and this is kind of specific to, well, it's kind of specific to radio, but it's also something that applies in other ways, I think, to other fields. But he basically said, put your classical musician or your musician hat aside, because your job here is not to be a university professor and show all the things that you know. Your job is to entertain people on the radio, and your job is to communicate effectively to these people who are not necessarily people with music degrees like you. So that was probably the biggest, most important initial lesson that I got. And I really feel as though, it was a wake-up call for me. It was, you have this specialized knowledge and you know a lot about it, but most of the people you're talking to overwhelmingly do not. And so, and this, again, this is why I say this applies to kind of whatever you do. I mean, if you're teaching any subject, right, you can't assume that your students come to the class the first day knowing everything you know. If they did, you would be superfluous. So the whole point is that, you want in radio, my job is to communicate, is to entertain and to communicate effectively. And so I had to kind of put aside all of the technical language, the insider stuff, the assumptions. Like I think it's really important. And when I train people in radio, you have to remind them that people don't automatically know. And here's one example. So when I was when I was on the air in Cincinnati as a local announcer, someone called me once. A listener called and was like, I played Tombeau de Couperin, and he's asking me all about this, like, what does that name mean? And so I'm like explaining the kind of the literal, the word tombeau, and it means this, but the connotation is that, and blah 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 blah. And then he said, okay, got it. What's a Couperin? And I thought, like I knew what that meant. I knew it was a composer, but like this man did not know that. And you can't assume that people know, that have an expertise or a knowledge of things that are insider. A lot of things in classical music, for example, are very insider, even the titles of pieces like sonata and concerto. So I make a point when I'm on the air to decipher that, to talk to people as though, not to dumb it down, but to talk to them in a way that's friendly and kind, and just kind of assumes, like, I'm not going to assume you don't know, but I'm also not going to make you feel stupid if you don't, so I would say that, again, communicating effectively, which is a good skill no matter what job you're in, kind of putting aside that, like, I'm an expert in this, and speaking to people where they are.
Right. You just brought to light something that's so important, I think, that all of our students and everyone needs to realize, and certainly Mo does, because he plays in so many different circumstances, and you've just described a number of different circumstances. So the moral of the story is do the gig.
Right.
Don't go somewhere, don't go play with Ray Charles and try to play like you're playing, right, exactly, and the analogy you want to use, exactly right. And you just said that so beautifully, Suzanne, and that's a really great lesson in itself right there.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So amazing. This is so fun. I could talk to you guys all day, so this is really great. I don't see any other questions in the chat at this point. So I guess we'll at this point. And I see please come visit, so
all right.
And
got to do it.
And we're hanging on the campus, and you won't even recognize it if you haven't been here in quite a long time. So it's really evolved and changed quite a bit. So
when are you coming to Connecticut?
Yeah, well, I've been looking for any excuse to play with you, Suzanne. So maybe we can do a little
master class.
You'll give me a little master class.
Absolutely, that'd be amazing.
We would welcome that for sure. So awesome, terrific. Well, thank you both so much. It was really a joy to speak to you both, and nice to meet you, Suzanne, today. And I hope that we do have this opportunity to meet in person at some point. And it's so kind of you to share your wisdom with us today. So thank you both so much, and let's not make it long in between visits this time.
Okay.
All righty. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.